clicking past, ain't feeling his hymn. Waiting for the moment, blow up like a piston. Haters gonna hate, but persistence gonna glisten. Hold tight, 20 turn 200 someday. Laugh in their face, shouting, who wants some pay? lighting up to my bed. Every day's a brand new episode on the Purpose Show.
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What up, Twitch? What up, Larry? What up, Anti-War Machine? What up, Cosmic? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up, tiny people in my chat arena? It's your boy. It's your boy. All right. Yo. Your reminder that there is not going to be a Friday evening stream this week and not going to be a Monday morning stream next week. I mean, there will be. I just won't be doing it. What up, Textillion? Yeah, Larry. I understand. So yeah, let's get into the news. First, before we get into the news, board game. Planned release August 21st, 2025. You can't really see it, but it's that box right there. And they are making a version of it for Steam. It's highly recommended. A lot of fun. And a little. What up, Fancy Pudding? So that'll be cool. Available for wish listing. If y'all wanna wish list it. This company, GMT, that's what this entire shelf is, almost. There's like some at the bottom that are not, because I don't have enough GMT games. But yeah. GMT is great. GMT during the pandemic, like that ended. During the pandemic, GMT actually sent people free board games, including myself, right? You one or two board games depending, but they actually sent people board games for free. It was amazing. Like so I will support GMT forever. As long as they continue to be awesome, which they have. Now the news. How the world could start a nuclear war by accident. China's expanding nuclear arsenal and the rise of artificial intelligence and military strategy risk fueling a new kind of conflict, experts warn. Hi. Your emotional support stampy is here. You're a good boy. Yeah, you want snacks? All right. What up, Ivan? I don't know who I am anymore. I'm getting too much money. The growing use of artificial intelligence in military planning could increase the risk of accidental nuclear war, a leading arms control monitor has said. In its annual report, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI, the leading independent body assessing worldwide nuclear forces, says the world's nuclear stockpiles are about to be no longer in decline. The stocks had been declining since the end of the Cold War. It highlights the fast increasing stocks of China, which have grown from 500 to 600 warheads in the year, and the imminent expiry of the last remaining arms control treaty between the United States and Russia. The Institute's director, Dan Smith, also warns that the new arms race carries much more risk and uncertainty than the last one, not least because of the development of new technologies. One component of the coming arms race will be the attempt to gain and maintain a competitive edge in artificial intelligence, both for offensive and defensive purposes. There are benefits to be found, but the careless adoption of AI could significantly increase nuclear risk. He says that AI and quantum technologies could make it easier to assess compliance with any nuclear agreements that are forged, but they encourage speedier and possibly less considered decision making. Where's the graph? There's a graph here. The graph here showed so this is a little older. This is from May, right? Before the update. And these are the countries that have nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads, and the change since 2023. You'll notice that the people, yeah, the whitest kids you know has, they have content appropriate. Like nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed. And you'll notice that the people at the top have more than the people at the bottom combined. And the past decade or more um, has really shown that once you have nuclear weapons in the current environment, you don't give them up, right? Because this list would have one more on it at least, and that country is currently involved in a ground war because they agreed to give up their nuclear weapons. So everybody's to blame. Everybody's to blame. Good job, everybody. Oh, yeah. Sure. Why not? Who gives a fuck? That's where we're at. People behaving incredibly irresponsibly. Benefits. Here we go. As the new technologies speed up decision making in a crisis, there is also the risk of a war as a result of miscommunication, misunderstanding, and even a technical accident. 9 countries possess nuclear weapons. 5 are the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and signatories of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty: the United States, Russia, China, Britain, and France. 2 declared nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, did not sign the NPT, while a third, North Korea, withdrew before conducting its first nuclear test. What's up, Christina? Israel neither signed the NPT nor declared its nuclear weapons, but is believed to possess about 90 warheads. China has been expanding its arsenal fastest. President Xi ordered a modernization of China's entire military, but particularly its missile and nuclear capabilities, reportedly after details emerged about the decay of its missile silos. The modernization appears to be working. The SIPRI report says 350 new intercontinental ballistic missile silos have been completed or are near completion as of January this year. However, its total number of warheads remains a fraction of those possessed by either America or Russia. Together, they hold 9 in 10 of the world's nuclear weapons. What's up, Dojo? Excuse me. As we all know, past performance is not an indicator of future results, and also, nukes are so August 6, 1945. The new scary ass weapon is thousands of drones. Not scary enough to bring parties to the peace table. As their relations have worsened since 2000 and an aggressive new breed of American strategies have questioned whether U.S. choices should be restrained by international treaties, their existing arms control measures have fallen away. The so called New START Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, agreed by President Obama and Putin in 2010, expires next February with no sign that it will be renewed in any form. Until now, the disposal of old nuclear warheads has meant that the total arsenal has declined rapidly since the fall of the Berlin Wall. That trend is now over, the new report suggests. The size of their respective military stockpiles seems to have stayed relatively stable in 2024, but both states are implementing extensive modernization programs that could increase the size and diversity of their arsenals in the future. A SIPRI report raises the case of Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, the Soviet officer sometimes heralded as the man who saved the world from nuclear Armageddon, a global hero. What up, McAllister? Yeah, Petrov is a global hero. In 1983, Petrov decided unilaterally, but correctly, that a computer which told him 5 American nuclear missiles were on their way to strike Russia was wrong. Jeffrey Kaplov, who researches nuclear security at the University of William and Mary in Virginia, said AI, if programmed well, could be used to assess risk in such circumstances better than humans. There's this idea that human decision making in a crisis is not that great. AI could help leaders navigate the cultural context and goals of their opposition more clearly, he said. The signs are that a new nuclear arms race is gearing up. Compared to the last one, the risks are likely to be more diverse and more serious. And then to Larry's point, Dojo's point, here's a little article from Mark Urban, totally real human being, about killer drones changing war. Oh, cool. China poised to launch a drone mothership. That thing that we've been talking about for some time. Are we having fun yet? So, from the conversation from Mohammed Wakil Shahzad, AI is gobbling up water it cannot replace. I'm working on a solution. Data centers are the invisible engines of our digital world. Every Google search, Netflix stream, cloud stored photo, or ChatGPT response passes through banks of high powered computers housed in giant facilities scattered across the globe. So at least I can appreciate, from the opening that, like, he's doing an apples to apples comparison regarding data centers, right? Not like some people and their, articles. It's a good start. These data centers consume a staggering amount of electricity and increasingly a surprising amount of water. But unlike the water you use at home, much of the water used in data centers never returns to the water reuse cycle. The silent drain is drawing concerns from environmental scientists. One preprint study from 2023 predicted that by 2027, global AI use would consume more water in a year than half of that used by the UK in the same time. That is a weird. I feel like somebody's asking me to do one of those math word problems, right? That in 2027, global AI use could consume more water in a year than half of that used by the UK in the same time. Just give me some numbers, dude. Data centers typically contain thousands of servers stacked and running 24/7. These machines generate immense heat and, if not properly cooled, can overheat and fail. This happened in 2022 when the UK endured a heat wave that saw temperatures reach a record breaking 40 degrees Celsius in some areas, which knocked off Google and Oracle data centers in London. To prevent this, data centers rely heavily on cooling system, and that's where water comes in. As an alternative thinker, I've never really understood war. How do old, rich people convince healthy young people to make such an enormous sacrifice? Historically speaking, it's nationalism, right? The idea that your particular country is better than other people's countries to the point where your country should be in charge, and if necessary, your country should occupy their country in order to tell them what to do. That's broadly historically the way that war has worked from at least World War II back, right? Like you're looking at, I mean, you thought about the Roman Empire today, so Rome, that's what their deal was. Alexander the Great and and Greece and all that. Um, and then World War One, same kind of thing. Germany in that war was looking to, you know, become the dominant power of Europe, and like, but that remember that everything exists on a continuum, right? The behavior of Germany in World War One was predicated by the behavior of winning the Franco-Prussian War just a few decades earlier, and all that was predicated on Napoleon attempting to conquer Europe, right, and create the continental system. Um, so that kind of behavior. It's all nationalism, right? It's all nationalism. We're the best. You should listen to us. You should do what we say. And that's what the Cold War was, and that's what American exceptionalism is, and that's what the Ukraine war is, right? Like it's all that kind of behavior. One of the most common methods for cooling data centers involves mechanical chillers, which work like large fridges. And these machines use a fluid called refrigerant to carry heat away from the servers and release it through a condenser. A lot of water is lost as it's not lost. A lot of water turns into vapor during the cooling process and cannot be reused. It returns to the water cycle, right? The water that's released by the chillers that, just returns to the water cycle. It doesn't float away into the atmosphere, it isn't destroyed. It becomes part of the water cycle again. A 1 megawatt data center that uses enough electricity to power 1,000 houses can use up to 23.5 million liters annually. The total data center capacity in the UK is estimated at approximately 1.6 gigawatts. The global data center capacity stands at about 59 gigawatts. Now, I'm not certain. Like we would have to look into the details, but the use of water comes in two parts, as Old Lobster has demonstrated on multiple occasions regarding their water cooling system. And if the cooling water exists in a closed loop system, very little, if any, is actually lost, right? From the system. When I say lost, from the system. What up, Pharaoh? If it's using a closed loop system, right? What is being lost is that which passes through the chillers in the process of using the heat exchanger. Okay, where did you get that number, Larry? Because that differs from the number that we have here. Because this guy is saying it's 25.5 million liters annually. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He does point that out right here, right? Um Oh, no. I'm sorry, Larry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to hold different thoughts in my head at the same time. A 1 megawatt data center you can use up to 25.5 million annually. So, yeah, then it's just math. So, yeah, sorry, Larry. Thank you, Larry. Unlike water used in a dishwasher or toilet, which often returns to a treatment facility to be recycled, the water and cooling system literally vanishes into the air. It becomes water vapor and escapes into the atmosphere. This fundamental difference is why data center water use is not comparable to that of typical household use, where water cycles back through municipal systems. As moisture in the atmosphere that can return to the land as rain, the water data centers use remains part of Earth's water cycle, but not all rainwater can be recovered. I mean, some of it. But I'm listening. I'm sorry. I'm commenting when I should be listening. The water is effectively lost to the local water balance, which is especially critical in drought prone or water scarce regions, where 2/3 of data centers since 2022 have been built. The slow return of this water makes its use for cooling data centers effectively non renewable in the short term. Fair, fair. All right. I'm giving this guy his credit. The rise of AI tools like ChatGPT, image generators, and voice assistants have made data centers work much harder. These systems need a lot more computing power, which creates more heat. To stay cool, data centers use more water than ever. I would like to see some data to support this, but I'm going to defer to them at this point in time because they seem to be operating in relatively good faith. This growing demand is leading to a greater reliance on water intensive cooling systems, driving up total water consumption even further. The International Energy Agency reported in April 2025 that data centers now consume more than 560 billion liters of water annually, possibly rising to 1.2 billion liters by year by 2030. So, what's the alternative? Another method, direct evaporative cooling, pulls hot air from data centers and passes it through water soaked pads. As the water evaporates, it cools the air, which is then sent back to server rooms. While this method is energy efficient, especially in warmer climates, the added moisture in the air can damage sensitive server equipment. This method requires additional systems to manage and control humidity, which necessitates more complex data center design. My research team and I have developed another method, which separates moist and dry air streams in data centers with a thin aluminum foil, similar to kitchen foil. The dry hot air passes close to the wet air stream, and heat is transferred through the foil without allowing any moisture to mix. This cools the server rooms and data centers without adding humidity that could interfere with the equipment. Trials of this method at Northumbria's University Data Center have shown it can be more energy efficient than conventional chillers and use less water. Powered entirely by solar energy, the system operates without compressors or chemical refrigerants. As AI continues to expand, demand for data centers is expected to skyrocket along with their water use. We need a global shift in how we design, regulate, and power digital infrastructure. Yeah, fair enough, right? Like, I don't know the efficacy of this system, right? But it sounds good. And if it does the thing, and I'm all for innovation in this regard, right? We're not going to do less data centers. We're just not. You can be mad at that, but we're not going to do it, right? Like in the in the vein of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. The world isn't set up to stop making data centers, right? Hey, it's the tool I was looking for. It just isn't. right? What up, Hydron? In order to do stuff, you require a an infrastructure of some kind, right? In this case, an infrastructure that uses political will. Political will to execute things on behalf of the people, such as they are. And we don't have that, right? You could say that the United States, depending on who you are, you could say the United States, for instance, doesn't has never had a system that actually reflected the will of the people, right? At the very least, you can say that it currently does not. And this is not political. This is math, right? Like people have demonstrated that the will of the people is not reflected in legislation. Um, I was looking for the. Do. There's a percentage chart that I was hoping to find. So, basically, long story short, is that people can, the electorate can be huge fans of something, and it will not be reflected in the legislation of Congress, right, of the government. Do I think a protein shake is a milkshake if it's made with milk? Yes. If a milkshake is if it's a shake made with milk, it is a milkshake. That would make sense. Um so in order to enact any particular um point of view, right? Let's say a high percentage point of view, something that the American electorate believes in strongly. You need a government that acts on that um that will of the people. And we don't have that. You would have had to have started that process before. You know what I mean? This is not like, I don't understand why this is controversial, but it is apparently. There are people who believe that you cannot participate in the system. Well, I'm just talking about like a high percentage, like 74% of the electorate agree with whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't want to get bogged down into any particular thing, right? Like I don't want to talk about, you know, um any particular legislation. I want to speak broadly. So, if you need the government to do something, right? Broadly speaking, that's the current state that we live in. If you want to accomplish a large scale goal, then you require the government, the federal government, to execute that behavior. Um And in order to make that happen, you need the federal government to reflect the will of the people, right? Like that, again, this particular piece of legislation that has 74% approval of the United States, right? You're not going to get 100%, et cetera, et cetera. So we're talking something in the neighborhood of like 3/4. 3 out of every 4 people think that whatever this is a thing that we should do. And you need a government that it's going to reflect that, right? Like is going to behave in that way. And we don't have that. Right? This is it, and again, this is not there's no controversy here. It's in the data. So how are you going to get the government to, for instance, legislate artificial intelligence if the government doesn't reflect the will of the people? So while I'm not against, you know, activism in that regard to try and get the government to more accurately reflect the will of the people, we're not there. So to talk about it like it's something that just should happen out of the fucking blue, as if by magic, I don't understand, like maybe you don't, Dojo. Like, that's a whole other question, right? That's the tyranny of the majority, right? And then where does the tyranny of the majority fall? Right? 51%, 50% if a portion of the other 50% doesn't actually participate, etc., etc. It's real easy to say, oh, the government should do this. Okay, great, cool, super awesome. Love that for you. How do you get from here to there? And if you're not talking about how you get from here to there, except with vague hand waving, then you're not a serious individual on this subject, right? There's that, Dojo. Some people think that democracy should be random, right? Rather than have us voting for senators and representatives, that just random fucking people should be chosen every year to go, or every period of time to go and serve. Hydron, Hydron, honestly, you take a step back with that and think about it, right? Like, as I know the part of the world that you're from, there are small groups of people within that section of the world who are oppressed by the tyranny of the majority, aren't there? I understand it feels ugly, right? On one thing, but you actually have to take a step back and look at it. And in the United States, right? Native Americans, indigenous populations around the world, they understand the tyranny of the majority, right? Like, it feels like tyranny of the majority. That sounds like that, these little populations who want to tell us what to do are trying to just go up against the will of the people. These are just phrases, identifiers within the conversation. But there are people out there who understand that the tyranny of the majority is a very real thing. Study you're thinking of is Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens by political scientist Martin Gilens Princeton, published in 2014. Sounds right. Let's see if ChatGPT know what it's talking about. That study exists. Oh no. Oh no. It did not hallucinate. But my narrative. Though. Multivariate analysis indicates that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while average citizens and mass based interest groups have little or no independent influence. And this is not, okay, we should throw up our hands and quit. Right? I'm just saying you need to get the fuck out of your imaginary world and get into the real world to understand the way the real world actually exists so that you can actually change it. Right? You can't keep driving the car and not get an oil change and pretend it's all going to be fine because the check engine light hasn't come on. Right? Like, that's not how that works. You have to maintain the fucking vehicle. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is actually, Pharaoh, that's an option, right? That's an option. Theoretically, if you could become a billionaire, then you could influence other billionaires, right? Because they would listen to you because you're one of them, and then you could explain to them in a particularly compelling way how good it feels, right? Like a form of philanthropy, right? Like, oh yes, no, I love to take care of the poors, right? Like, it makes me so happy. I started this universal basic income thing, and the poors get $1,000 a month, and they're so happy. You should see them. $1,000 a month. Can you imagine? They're so happy. Look at them eating, right? Like, I heard that, Larry. I heard that. I don't know how true it is, but I heard that. Moving on. Speaking of things we do and do not want. Norwegian SciTech News, identifying the technology we do not want. Who and to Dojo's point, right? Who am we? Who is we who's deciding what technology we do and do not want? When new technology fails, it's not always because it does not work as intended. Sometimes people simply don't want to use it. One researcher believes this should be predictable. There's something paradoxical about our relationship with technology. We have very high expectations that new technology will solve the greatest challenges of our time. At the same time, yeah, that's my point, Larry. Is like Sam Altman said a thing, right? And maybe it's true, right? Maybe it's advertising for the best of the best to come work for OpenAI because they're so our staff is so good that other people are willing to offer you $100 million signing bonus to leave OpenAI and go over to Meta, right? So like I file it in stuff that people say kind of thing, right? I would need to see something like that. You know what I mean? Show me an email, Sam, right? Otherwise, where was I? Show me the money. We have very high expectations that new technology will solve the greatest challenges of our time. At the same time, we are quite often skeptical about using new technological solutions. Sarang Sheikh, I'm going with, a PhD research fellow at NTNU in Gjøvik, I believe, believes that being able to predict which of the two scenarios will play out is important. Not being able to predict whether people will adopt new technologies can result in significant losses of both time and money. Sheikh and his colleagues have now developed a tool designed to prevent this from happening. Expensive border control technology has not been a hit. And this is not American border control, this is European border control. Sheikh and his colleagues were tasked with investigating why new technology recently installed at airports and border crossings across Europe is so underused. Travelers are accustomed to having a person check our passport when we are on our journey. With the new technology, people get channeled through a set of barriers. Your passport and fingerprints are scanned, and a computer compares that photo in your passport with your face. Everything is in order, the barrier opens, and you're allowed to pass through to the other side. What up, Joint Specialist? Oh, I should just ban you. I should just ban you for that joke. What up, Iggy? The EU invested millions of euros to automate border control. Several years after the technology was installed and made available across much of Europe, many travelers still choose not to use this expensive technology. It's hard to imagine anything simpler and more efficient. Why then do so many people still prefer manual checks? The EU Commission therefore asked researchers to help understand why this was the case and how to avoid it in the future. Before we could develop a tool to predict whether a technology will be used or not, we had to understand which factors are most important in determining whether someone chooses to use a specific technology or not. And it turned out that it was much more than just the technology itself. By interviewing users of automated border control, as well as the border guards who operate them, the researchers identified three crucial factors that determined whether travelers would switch to using the new technology. User profile. How old is the user? What sex are they? What level of education do they have? Is the person a seasoned traveler or a first time traveler? User perception. How did the user feel after using the technology? Was it a positive experience or did it cause negative feelings like stress? Did the person use the technology in a good way or not? The surroundings. What is it like when the traveler decides to use the technology? Is there a long queue, long waiting times? Does using the technology seem simple and seamless, or does it feel like a cumbersome process? Excuse me. In addition to interviews from 5 pilot studies around Europe, the researchers gained a lot of valuable data from online discussions. We also collected and analyzed large volumes of data from social media. We then compared the data with what we had already gathered from the interviews. We found that what was discussed online largely aligned with the experiences reported by the border guards. The next step was to combine the data and then to involve machine learning and then to involve machine. What up, Sean? The big question was whether we could generalize the results to also apply to technologies that do not yet exist or have not been rolled out. The goal is for anyone who wants to develop or introduce a new technology to have access to a tool that allows them to assess how the technology is likely to be received. Based on this information, they will be able to make more informed decisions about whether or not to move forward with the technology. To test whether this was even possible, the researchers used machine learning to train a model based on the data they had collected. The model has already been tested at several automated border crossings across Europe. It enabled the researchers to predict whether travelers who had never used the new border crossing controls before would choose the automated or manual option. And I can imagine if you are a rare traveler, especially like in an airport, there's a certain amount of terror that goes along with that. And I mean that like in the sense of being afraid, right? Like because you see it on TV and on the movies and all that kind of stuff, and it's all like who packed this bag, and have you been separated from your luggage for any amount of time, and et cetera, right? Like, and usually you are just trying to get on the plane and get to a place, and the last thing you want is to spend any amount of time interacting with security, right? Like the minimum amount of time. I just want to get on the plane and go to where it is. And like there are right answers and there are wrong answers, and you don't want to give a wrong answer and end up in a small room talking to very serious looking people. So I can imagine that if you're a rare traveler, right? You don't travel, especially by plane, very often. You don't cross borders very often. You're more likely to go with whatever the pack is doing, right? The tried and true method. All these people are going here, and I know exactly what to do because I've seen it on TV, etc. Exactly, Dojo. So yeah, making it because like not only am I going to do all that, but now I'm going to interact with a new piece of technology that if I use it wrong, everyone will be looking at me, right? Like I you can see what I'm going for. So far, the findings suggest the results can be generalized beyond the original data set, and the model can already predict with higher accuracy the extent to which a technology will be used compared to previous methods. Shake now hopes that other researchers will make use of the data sets he and his colleagues have made publicly available. Yay, we like you. When I started studying this, the lack of data was one of the biggest challenges we face. We have now published two data sets that have never been available before. Researchers and other interested parties will be able to use these to train even more advanced and accurate models in the future. Nice job. Shout out Shake. Shout out Shake for not being afraid of artificial intelligence, unlike some people. Boop boopy doo boopy doo boopy doopy doo boom boopy doo boopy doo boopy doo boom boopy doo boopy doo boopy doo boom. Ba-da. AI is poised. Yeah, exactly, Sean. Like we we want a simple easy, right? Like what's the easy button? Show me the easy button. That's what I want to do. AI is poised to rewrite history, literally. The technology's ability to read and summarize text is already making it a useful tool for scholarship. How will it change the stories we tell about the past? This is history. Stories we tell about the past. It is not 100% accurate. The only way you could, I don't even know if you could. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other fucking animal. History is the stories we tell about the past. During my 25 years as a magazine editor, my favorite part of the job has always been helping writers figure out what the story is, where to start it, where to end it, what's important and new about it. So, with no small amount of humility, that earlier this year, I sat in a Google corporate cafeteria along the west side of Manhattan and watched as one of my longtime writers, Stephen Johnson, the technology journalist and historian, received that kind of guidance from an AI instead of me. Johnson, who has published popular histories about pirate attacks, the invention of modern policing, and the birth of public health, had begun noodling on a possible book about the California gold rush in the mid 19th century. But he was still at the point where he didn't know much more than that. Where's my twist? Literally, I don't know. This is another. There are benefits and I don't know, pitfalls that exist within the way that we write about stuff, right? Especially when it comes to history. Is if well, you're not bringing anything new to the table, right? Like significantly new. I think that there's value in taking a lot of historical texts that were written at different periods of history and just kind of like doing a new analysis and doing a comparative analysis with them to get like more of a broad anthology of that. But people don't want to do that. What they want is this is my new twist, and it's actually, here's a thing, and this one trick that the ancient Mesopotamians did will shock you. And it's like, okay, dude, that's fine. But that means a lot of shit doesn't get written. And a lot of stuff sits on a shelf until someone like David Graeber pulls it out to do his twist, right? Like The Dawn of Everything. Highly recommend that book. And this is to say, like, I enjoy a good twist, right? Like, phrasing. I enjoy that as much as anyone, but like at the same time, there's like a reconstruction has value as well. To figure it out, Johnson had loaded up some of his sources into Notebook LM, an app for researchers and writers that he himself helped build. I mean, it's an app for everyone that researchers and writers can use. But, you know, everyone could use it. It's not just for researchers and writers. After becoming the editorial director of Google Labs Division 3 years ago. Unlike most other AI tools, which draw their answers to questions from the mind boggling infinitude of data they were trained on, Notebook LM draws only from the files selected by the user, on the premise that most forms of research benefit from thoughtfully curating your source material. Fair. Absolutely. Absolutely. At some point in time, you have to decide what's in and what's out. Otherwise, you'll be writing an infinite book. Since the product's worldwide release last year, Google and Johnson have been promoting its utility for all manner of tasks, whether it's auto-generating minutes and takeaways from an audio recording of a meeting, or encouraging a more licit use of AI among college students. Notebook LM's most viral capability is an auto-generated podcast, which in a matter of a couple of minutes, it can take up to like 15, will spit out a detailed conversation between two freakishly realistic voices, drawing out the key concepts of the source material. But as an occasional author of history books myself, I was most interested in how AI, one of whose many superpowers, is the ability to inhale large amounts of text in an instant, like Kirby, and offer credible summaries of it, might transform the way history is written. At Google that evening, as the sun went down over the Hudson, Johnson showed me the results of his experiments so far. He started his brainstorming process by giving Notebook LM excerpts from one of the finest existing histories on the gold rush, H.W. Brand's The Age of Gold. He thought he might want to focus on the conflict between white gold seekers and the Native American groups living in the Yosemite Valley in the 1850s, so he uploaded the text of an older source called Discovery of the Yosemite by Lafayette Houghton Bunnell, who was a part of the Mariposa Battalion, the militia unit that rode into the valley in 1851. Next, to bring the indigenous perspective, he went to public domain websites and found two accounts about the people whom the battalion expelled from the valley. The Awanichis, a story of the Yosemite Indians, and Indians of the Yosemite Valley and vicinity. Johnson started his conversation with Notebook LM with a little orientation, identifying himself as the author Stephen Johnson, so that the AI, whose training allows it to understand almost the whole internet as ChatGPT does, even if it constrains its answers to the uploaded sources. And this is, again, this is New York Times, right? Who is not particularly pro AI and especially not particularly pro ChatGPT due to the legal finaglings that are currently going on. So the perspective that so far is coming across in this is refreshing. Bloop, 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 bloop. Then he started peppering it with questions. What in the two sources that focused on the indigenous experience, he asked, was missing from the other two sources? When the model returned its summary, his eye was caught on the observation that the Awanichis, by including short biographies of individual Yosemite Indians, helps to humanize the people beyond being a tribal mass, which is something that the Age of Gold and Bunnell's book tend to do. Yeah, that would make sense. The AI listed some of their names, among them Maria Labrado, granddaughter of the Yosemite chief Tenaya. That piqued Johnson's interest. He asked for more information about Labrado, and the tool returned nearly 600 words of biography. That she was one of the 72 native people forced to leave the valley by the battalions in March 1851. She eventually married a Mexican man who ran a pack train down to the Central Valley, that she was discovered by a white historian in the 1920s and held up as last of the original Yosemite Indians. Right away, now, there's a certain tension that I'm currently experiencing that ChatGPT hallucinated this person. Right? That is, I'm waiting for a shoe to drop. It may never drop. But it's here, right? Like, that's the world we live in at the moment. Right away, Johnson recognized that she would make a great character. He took note in particular of the fact that Labrado returned to the valley near the end of her life. I'm like, what's the expletive structure of Titanic? He joked. The book could open with what Johnson imagined was Labrado's emotional return to the valley at nearly 90 years old, before zooming back in time to her childhood to a broader cast of characters in the violent drama of the 1850s. Johnson wasn't sold on this idea yet, but he marveled at how AI, operating with mostly open source text and a tiny amount of human labor, had delivered him a concept that he absolutely could use. Everything I just showed you is like 30 minutes of work. Like most people who work with words for a living, I've watched the rise of large language models with a combination of fascination and horror, and it makes my skin crawl to imagine one of them writing on my behalf. But there is, I confess, something seductive about the idea of letting AI read for me, considering how cruelly the internet era explosion of digitized text now mocks nonfiction writers with access to more voluminous sources on any given subject than we can possibly process. This is true not just of present day subjects, but past ones as well. Any history buff knows that a few hours of searching online amid tens of millions of books digitized by Google, the endless trove of academic papers available on JSTOR, the newspaper databases that let you keyword search hundreds of publications on any given day in history can cough up months or even years worth of reading material. It is impossible to read it all, but once you know it exists, it feels irresponsible not to read it. What if you could entrust most of that reading to someone else or something else? As AI becomes more capable of parsing language data sets, it seems inevitable that historians and other nonfiction writers will turn to it for assistance. In fact, as I discovered in surveying a wide variety of historians over the last few months, experiments with it are already far more common than I expected. But it also seems inevitable that this power to help search and synthesize historical texts will change the kind of history books that are written. If history, per the adage, is written by the winners, then it is not premature to wonder how the winners of the AI race might soon shape the stories that historians tell about the past. Among the historians I spoke to, what up, Maddie? Uh, Among the historians I spoke with, one of the more enthusiastic experimenters was Fred Turner, who teaches in the communication department at Stanford. I arrived at his office expecting to interview him about how AI fits into the long history of information technology, but we wound up spending much of our time discussing how ChatGPT has helped him with his latest book project, which revolves around the New York City art scene of the 1970s and 1980s. He was at a stage that he called a source outline, meaning a document of 100 pages or so, compiling all his research, organized more or less in the arc of the book that I think it's going to become. From that, he was planning to write a proposal, but he figured he would ask ChatGPT first. In response, the chatbot rattled off a plausible, polished 8-chapter structure, one that surfaced useful connections in his research and also suggested a more streamlined narrative for the project. Beyond that, he said, what it did was give me my quite scholarly work read back to me through a middle brow voice. Uh, It found the sort of average in my work, which was really interesting. He went on, it's almost as though I got to take the book to market, stand in the bookstore, and hold it up in front of a whole bunch of interested but non specialist readers and have them tell me what was working for them and what wasn't. There are a handful of scholars who are beginning to more formally incorporate the use of LLMs into their work. One of them is Mark Humphreys, a professor at Wilfrid Laurier University in Ontario, whose research projects involve enormous stores of digitized records from Canadian history. In one project, he and his students used AI to analyze tens of thousands of handwritten records about late 18th and early 19th century fur trading in order to better understand the far-flung community of traders, now known collectively as voyageurs, who, with their families, explored and later settled much of what would eventually become Canada. If you can pass those records to a large language model and you can say, tell me who Alexander Henry's trading partners were, Humphreys said, the neat thing is that it's able to very quickly go through and not just search by name, but do cross referencing, where you're able to find relationships. The goal is to find not just one-to-one transactions between specific voyageurs, but chains of interconnection that would be hard for human researchers to make quickly. It takes an AI 20 seconds. It might take a graduate student doing the same work weeks. To be sure, Humphreys, like Stephen Johnson, is swimming in the deep end of AI experimentation. Most historians I contacted were only dipping a wary toe in the water. When I reached out to Ada Ferrer, Princeton professor and author of the Pulitzer Prize winning book Cuba and American History, she wrote back an hour later that she had just tried playing with AI in recent weeks. I was finishing up a book and feeling stuck on a title, so I asked ChatGPT. I kept tinkering with my prompt, including different themes, making suggestions about tone, and so on. In the end, it probably gave me about 20 title ideas. None were quite good enough, however, and her book remained untitled. Ferrer sounded a note that many other academic historians did, and that their attitudes toward AI lived in the shadow of their students cheating with it, which simultaneously made them reluctant to touch it, but also seemed to have made them understand just how powerful it was as a tool. I am haunted by the fact that it would be very hypocritical, sorry, emphasis mine. I am haunted by the fact that it would be hypocritical for me to use AI, given how concerned I am with students' use of it, said Jefferson Covey of Vanderbilt, who won a Pulitzer Prize for Freedom's Dominion, a saga of white resistance to federal power. Okay. But he added, I also know that a few people will be putting it to astoundingly creative use once we get a handle on it. Now my brain is stuck. Oh, okay. Good. When freedom, that book, right? Freedom's Dominion. When freedom meant the freedom to oppress others. Jefferson Cowie's powerful and sobering new history, Freedom's Dominion, traces the close association between the rhetoric of liberty in an Alabama county and the politics of white supremacy. And George Wallace. Okay, all right. Woo! I was a little concerned there. Um, the obvious question hanging over the future of AI history and the technology's utility for all manner of other things comes down to the strides it needs to make on its accuracy problem. Charles C. Mann, author of 1491 and most recently The Wizard and the Prophet, told me that he experimented with various models while researching a new book project about the history of the American West, and they turned up some great leads, but he became disturbed at how easily it was for them to regurgitate bad information. Mann contrasted it with the rigor of a human editorial process. I'm sure you've had that moment as a journalist where a smart editor has said, wait a second, does this make sense? And you say, oh crap, it doesn't. That's what AI can't do. It has no bullshit detector. That's where the human comes in, right? In May of this year, the Times published bracing numbers about how inexplicably, for all the for all the strides and capability that LLMs were otherwise making, their hallucination problem was getting worse. For example, on a benchmark test, OpenAI's new O3 reasoning model delivered inaccuracies 33% of the time, more than twice the rate of its predecessor. To Johnson and his team at Google, the persistence of this problem validates the approach of LLM, Notebook LM. While the tool does occasionally misrepresent what's in its sources and passes along errors from that sources without much ability to fact check them, constraining the research material does seem to cut down on the types of whole cloth fabrication that still emerge from the major chatbots. Hallucination is a feature, not a bug. And there will be people who go, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and I will say, go fuck yourself, because hallucination is a feature, not a bug. What is invaluable in the creative realm is not invaluable in the, let's say, nonfiction realm, right? In that nonfiction realm, you need to make sure that the tool that you're using is verifying those sources, right? And again, it's really easy to hand wave this shit. Like, humans don't do this, right? What was his name? Stephen Glass? Philip Glass? No, Stephen. Yeah. Stephen Glass is the one who he basically just made up a whole bunch of stories, right? In this case, a 15-year-old hacker and shit like that. Philip Glass is a composer, yeah. But Stephen Glass is the one who just made shit up. Got published, making shit up. Hallucinated, one could argue. And again, like, you know, it's and I'm not saying that this is a good thing, right? I'm just indicating that this is a thing that can occur, right? And I am, like, the very existence of ground news, right? The ground news, the darling of people looking to get a what you call it, sponsorship. And I'm not above it. Ground news, you know, hit me up. Uh shows you, like, on any particular subject, right? I don't want to. That's fucking. Here we go. On any particular subject, you're going to get like different points of view, right? And broadly, factuality should be rated high for anything that you consume, right? You want stuff that is factually accurate. Some of these news organizations can deviate from factuality to the point where they begin to just fabricate whole new stuff. When I have the time, instead of immediately submitting my initial prompt, I ask the model to first suggest a better prompt. This approach helps ensure that my final input is more comprehensive. Agreed. Alternative facts, right? Right? Or spurious connections. You can tell the facts in a way that is that creates spurious connection. And as long as your reader doesn't dig into it, then keep getting away with it. That said, Johnson also believes that the most exciting uses for LLMs in nonfiction research are the ones in which the results will always be fact checked. Rather than seeing AI as an undergrad research assistant, he's envisioning as it as more like a colleague from another department, or perhaps a smart book agent or editor who can help him see the most interesting version of his own ideas. Should be noted that, for other historians, this is hardly an inspiring prospect. When I asked Stacy Schiff, the author of decorated biographies of Cleopatra and Vera Nabokov, about the notion of consulting AI on how to structure a piece of writing, she replied, "To turn to AI for structure seems less like a cheat than a deprivation, like enlisting someone to eat your hot fudge sundae for you." Jesus Christ. How might AI change the way history is written and understood? To answer that question, it's useful to think about LLMs as merely the latest in a long series of shifts in the organizing of human knowledge. At least since the 3rd century BC, when
We are the board. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Ahoy, hoy! What up, Doc? What up, Holistic Field? What up, Dr. Koshi? What up, El Hongo? I'm Globus the Elder. I talk about AI, automation, future tech, robots, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes, yeah, we're actually going to be rating out in the next 4 minutes. But by all means, you should hit that follow button. We're currently actually talking about this article from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I just right into James. That way people from the James community who are going to definitely want to watch James, you'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war. For you, Doc, anything. We're reading this article, which is about how historians are interacting with artificial intelligence in the process of their writing of the books. I will be back later this evening at 5 p.m. For those of you who are only just getting now, you should hit that follow button. What up, T-minus? The GOAT. But we were just talking about, like, this is a very nuanced take from the New York Times, who are currently involved in a lawsuit with OpenAI. They're not big fans of AI, broadly speaking. I would say that their bias shows. But this is a good one. Yes, Cosmic, I have those videos in the thing. New York Times can pike off. Well, I mean, I always find it fascinating. I guess we're done because I've got to chat a bit before we raid out. I always find it fascinating when people, not you, right, but people, other people, will be like, "Oh, the New York Times did this about this particular situation that I completely disagree with the New York Times about, etc., etc." And then when they needed to bolster their arguments regarding, their anti-artificial intelligence takes, then they're like, "Oh, New York Times said this and New York Times said that. New York Times is suing them." It's like, so they're an ally of convenience for you, right? You either you like them when you like them and hate them when you hate them. Okay. Oh, I just call them as I see them, Doc. I just calls them as I see them. Is Twister a board game? Yes. Yeah. For those of the new people, I also talk about board games because these two shelves are the board games that you get to see. I also have board games up there and board games up there. Many board games. Exactly, Sean. You get it. Twister is a board game because it technically has a board, right? The mat on which you put your hands and feet and other parts. And it has the spinner. So yes, Sean, Twister is a board game. Board games are cool. Board games are one of the most effective tools for teaching a variety of different things. One, because of associative memory, and two, because of fun, you know? Like, I have a bunch of board games for teaching, you know, like economics. I have board games for teaching history. I have board games for teaching pretty much anything that you could possibly think of, right? And they are a great social activity. And that's another aspect is getting people out in the world to like engage with each other and meet space in a, you know, a fun, constructive way. Baby, I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me maybe. Doc, yeah, no, absolutely. Doc, I'm always down for a collab. All right, I am raiding over to James. Stick around for the raid. I'll be back this evening at 5 p.m. If you stay in the James stream, James is probably going to raid into me at about 6 p.m. So if you enjoy James's content, stick around and you'll be back with me. And in the meantime, Doc's favorite part, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Shaggy loves you. So do I. Be great.